Most men completely misunderstand attraction. They think it's about what a woman says, how she responds, or how interested she sounds. They look for clear signs, obvious signals, something they can easily recognize and label. But the truth is, by the time a woman says anything directly, you're already late. Because attraction doesn't reveal itself through words first. It shows up through access. There's a specific way a woman's body responds when she starts to trust you, when she starts to feel safe around you, and when something deeper begins to open inside her. And it doesn't happen randomly. It follows a pattern, a very precise one. Here's what most men never realize. Every part of a woman's body carries a different level of emotional meaning. Some areas are neutral, almost automatic. Others are guarded, protected without her even thinking about it. And then there are a few places, very specific ones, that she only allows access to when something has already shifted internally. Not when she's being polite. Not when she's just comfortable. But when she's starting to let you in. And if you miss that moment, you miss everything. Because when a woman allows you into that space, it's not just physical, it's psychological. It's her nervous system making a decision before her mind even catches up. It means her guard is lowering, her trust is building, and she's no longer seeing you like every other man. She may not say it. She may not even fully understand it herself, but her body will show it clearly. Now this is where most men get it wrong. They treat all touch the same. They think holding her hand means the same thing as touching her shoulder. They assume that physical closeness always equals attraction, and because of that, they completely misread what's actually happening. They either move too fast or they hesitate when they should be paying attention. And both mistakes cost them. Because this isn't about touching her. It's about understanding what she's already allowing. That's the difference. When you understand where she lets you touch, and more importantly how she reacts to it, you stop guessing. You stop overthinking. You stop relying on what she says and start reading what she's already showing you. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because suddenly every interaction makes sense. You'll understand when she's just being polite, when she's comfortable, and when she's starting to open up in a way that most men completely miss. So, in this video I'm going to break it down step by step. You'll learn how to read the different levels of touch, what each one actually means, and the one specific place that reveals more about her feelings than anything else. Not based on guesswork, not based on tricks, but based on real psychology. Because once you understand this, you're no longer trying to figure her out. You're simply reading what's already there. Now that you understand that attraction shows up through access and behavior, the next thing you need to see clearly is why most men get this completely wrong. It's not because they're not trying, it's because they're looking in the wrong place. Most men rely almost entirely on words. They listen to what a woman says, how often she replies, whether she sounds interested, and they use that as their main way of judging attraction. If she sounds friendly, they assume she likes them. If she sounds distant, they assume she doesn't. But words are the least reliable part of the interaction. A woman can be polite without being interested. She can be warm without being attracted. She can even act slightly distant while still feeling something strong underneath. Words are filtered. They're controlled. They're shaped by how she wants to present herself in that moment. Her behavior is different. Her behavior leaks the truth. And this is where the disconnect happens. Because while you're listening to what she says, her body is already telling you something else. The way she positions herself, how comfortable she is with proximity, how she reacts to small moments of contact. All of that is happening in real time outside of conscious control. But most men miss it because they treat every physical interaction the same. They don't understand that not all touch carries the same meaning. To them, touching her arm, holding her hand, or placing a hand on her back are just different versions of the same thing, physical contact. But to her, those are completely different levels of access, each one tied to a specific level of trust. And when you don't understand that, you misread everything. You might think she's interested because she didn't pull away from a casual touch, when in reality, she was just being polite. Or you might hesitate when she's actually giving you a stronger signal, simply because you don't recognize the significance of it. Another mistake men make is focusing too much on the action itself instead of the reaction. They think, I touched her hand so that must mean something. But what really matters is how she responds to that moment. Does she stay relaxed? Does she lean in slightly? Does she allow the contact to continue without tension? Or does she subtly pull back, reset her posture, or create distance again? That response tells you everything. Because attraction is not just about what happens. It's about how it's received. Now, here's another layer that most men overlook. Your mindset going into these interactions affects everything. If you approach touch like a move, like something you're trying to do to get a reaction, she will feel that immediately. Women are extremely sensitive to intention. They don't just feel your hand, they feel the energy behind it, whether it's confident and natural or hesitant and forced. And that changes how she responds. The same exact touch can feel completely different depending on the man behind it. That it's about understanding that her body is constantly communicating with you, even when she says nothing. And if you learn how to read that communication, you stop making the mistakes most men repeat over and over again. You stop assuming. You stop forcing. You start observing. And once you start observing, something becomes clear very quickly. There's a pattern to how women allow physical closeness, a progression. Not random, not chaotic, but structured in a way that reflects how much trust she's building with you. And that's what we're going to break down next. It's why this isn't about technique, it's about awareness. It's about understanding that her body is constantly communicating with you, even when she says nothing. And if you learn how to read that communication, you stop making the mistakes most men repeat over and over again. You stop assuming. You stop forcing. You start observing. And once you start observing, something becomes clear very quickly. There's a pattern to how women allow physical closeness, a progression. Not random, not chaotic, but structured in a way that reflects how much trust she's building with you. And that's what we're going to break down next. Now let's go deeper. Because if you don't understand this part, everything else will just feel like random behavior instead of a clear pattern. Touch is not just physical, it's psychological. When you make contact with a woman, her brain is not just registering where you touched her, it's instantly processing something much deeper. It's reading intention, confidence, emotional state, and most importantly, whether you feel safe or not. And this happens in a fraction of a second, before she even has time to think about it. That's why two men can do the exact same thing and get completely different reactions. One man places his hand lightly on her arm, and she relaxes, stays present, maybe even leans in slightly. Another man does the same thing, and she subtly pulls away, adjusts her position, or creates distance without saying a word. Same action, different response. The difference is not the touch itself, it's what she feels behind it. Because her nervous system is always scanning. It's asking questions automatically. Is this man calm or tense? Is he confident or unsure? Is this natural or forced? And based on those answers, her body reacts, not her words. Her body. This is why touch is one of the most honest forms of communication between a man and a woman. You can say the right things and still feel off. You can act confident and still feel uncertain underneath. But when you make physical contact, there's no filter. What you are comes through. Now, here's where it becomes even more important. A woman doesn't give access to her body all at once. She gives it in levels. Each level represents a different stage of trust. At the beginning, the access is minimal. Neutral areas, low emotional meaning, places where touch doesn't carry much weight. But as her comfort grows, as her trust builds, she begins to allow more, not consciously, instinctively. And this progression is not random. Follows a very clear structure. Her body becomes like a map of her trust. Some areas are easy to access. Some are guarded. And a few are deeply protected. Those protected areas are not about physical sensitivity. They're about emotional significance. She only allows access there when something inside her has shifted. When she feels safe, when she feels connected, when she starts seeing you differently from everyone else. And that's the key. Because when you understand this, you stop thinking in terms of, did she let me touch her? And you start thinking in terms of, where did she allow access and how did she respond to it? That's where the real information is. Now here's something most men overlook. This progression doesn't just depend on her. It depends on you, your presence, your behavior, your ability to make her feel comfortable without forcing anything. Because if you rush the process, if you try to skip levels, her body will immediately react by closing off again. But if you allow it to build naturally, step by step, she will open up on her own. And when that happens, the signals become clearer, not louder, but more meaningful. So now that you understand that her body works like a map of trust, the next step is to break down that map, to understand what each level actually means, and how to recognize when she's moving from one stage to the next. Now that you understand that touch is psychological, and that her body reflects different levels of trust, the next step is to see it clearly as a system. Because it is a system, not random, not emotional chaos, not it depends. There's a structure to how a woman allows physical closeness, and once you understand that structure, everything starts to make sense. Think of her body as a map. Not in a physical sense, but in an emotional one. Every area represents a different level of access. Some areas are open to almost everyone. Others are reserved. And a few are only accessible when she feels a strong level of trust and connection. The mistake most men make is treating all of these areas the same. They assume that if she allows any kind of touch, it must mean attraction. But that's not true. There are levels to it, and each level tells you something specific about how she feels. At the lowest level, there are neutral zones. These are areas where touch doesn't carry much emotional meaning. It's the kind of contact that can happen casually, socially, even with people she's not attracted to. There's no real risk for her. No real vulnerability. Then there are connection zones. These carry more weight. When she allows touch here, it means she's becoming more comfortable, more engaged. There's a slight shift from neutral interaction into something more personal. After that, you move into trust zones. These are areas where she's no longer just comfortable. She's starting to trust you. Not fully, not completely, but enough to allow a level of closeness that she wouldn't give to just anyone. This is where her body starts making decisions based on how safe she feels with you. And then there are the vulnerable zones. These are the most important because these areas are not just physically sensitive, they are emotionally significant. They represent parts of her that she protects without even thinking about it. When she allows access here, it's not casual and it's not accidental. It means something has shifted internally. She's no longer evaluating you the same way she was before. She's no longer just deciding if she likes you. She's starting to let you in. Now here's the key point. You don't move through these levels by forcing anything. You don't jump from neutral to vulnerable. You don't skip steps. The movement happens naturally based on how she feels in your presence. If she feels safe, relaxed, and emotionally comfortable, she will gradually allow more. If she doesn't, she will stay at the lower levels, no matter what you try to do. And this is why awareness matters so much. Because if you understand where you are on that map, you know exactly what's happening in the interaction without needing her to say a word. You know if she's just being polite. You know if she's becoming comfortable. You know if she's starting to trust you. And you know when something deeper is beginning. That clarity removes guesswork. It removes overthinking. It allows you to respond naturally instead of trying to figure things out in the moment. Now, to make this even clearer, we're going to break down each level step by step. Starting with the areas that most men misunderstand completely, the ones that feel like signals but often aren't. Let's start with the level that confuses most men, the neutral zone. This includes areas like the arms, shoulders, and sometimes the upper back. These are the places where touch doesn't carry strong emotional meaning. It's the kind of contact that can happen in everyday situations without signaling attraction. And this is exactly where most men misread everything. A woman might let you touch her arm while talking. She might not pull away if you briefly place your hand on her shoulder. She might even initiate light contact in a social, friendly way. And in that moment, many men immediately assume something deeper is happening. But most of the time it's not. This level of touch is comfortable, safe. It doesn't require trust in the deeper sense. Think about it this way. These are the same areas where friends, coworkers, or even strangers in certain situations might make contact without it meaning anything significant. There's no emotional risk for her in allowing it. That's why it's neutral. Now, this doesn't mean it's meaningless. Just means it's the starting point. It tells you she's not uncomfortable with you. It tells you she's open to basic interaction. But it does not automatically mean attraction. And it definitely does not mean she's ready for anything more. And here's where most men make their mistake. They treat neutral touch like a green light. They think she didn't pull away, so she must like me. And because of that, they either move too fast or start building expectations that aren't actually supported by what's happening. That's how they misread the situation. What you need to focus on at this level is not the touch itself, but her overall comfort. How does she behave around you? Is she relaxed? Does she engage naturally? Does she stay present? Or does she subtly create distance in other ways? Because the real signal at this stage is not attraction, it's openness. And openness is just the foundation. Now, here's something important to understand. If she's uncomfortable even at this level, everything else stops. If she pulls away from neutral touch, if she stiffens, if she creates distance consistently, it means she hasn't reached a point of comfort yet. And without comfort, there is no progression. So this level matters, but not in the way most men think. It's not a signal to push forward. It's a signal to observe, to understand where you stand, to see whether she's comfortable enough to even continue interacting. Once that comfort is there consistently, then something else begins to happen. She starts allowing a different kind of contact, one that carries more meaning, one that involves a small level of trust. And that's where the interaction starts shifting from neutral into something more personal. Once a woman is consistently comfortable with you at a neutral level, the interaction doesn't just stay there. It either moves forward or it stops. And when it moves forward, it shifts into what we can call the connection and early trust zones. This is where touch starts carrying more meaning, and where her reactions begin to tell you something real. One of the first areas where this shows up is the hands. Holding hands might seem simple, but psychologically, it's very different from neutral contact. When a woman allows you to hold her hand, she's not just allowing physical contact, she's allowing a level of connection. Her hands are tools of interaction, expression, and control. Letting you hold them means she's comfortable sharing that space with you. And the key again is not just that it happens, but how it happens. Does she hold on naturally? Or does she release quickly? Does her grip feel relaxed or slightly tense? Does she initiate contact at any point, even briefly? These details matter. Because at this level, her behavior starts becoming more intentional, even if she's not fully aware of it. Then you move slightly deeper, the wrist. This is where things start shifting into trust. The wrist is more exposed, more sensitive, and less commonly touched casually. When she allows contact here without hesitation, it's a sign that her comfort is increasing and her guard is lowering, even if just a little. Now, here's where it becomes even more important, the waist and lower back. This is where many men either misread the situation or handle it incorrectly. When a woman allows you to place your hand on her lower back, especially in a guiding or protective way, her body is making a quick decision about you. Because this is an area she cannot easily monitor visually. She can't see your hand without turning, which means her trust has to be instinctive. If she stays relaxed, if she doesn't immediately adjust or step away, it means her body accepted your presence in that space. Not out of politeness, but out of comfort. And comfort at this level begins to carry weight. Now again, this doesn't automatically mean deep attraction, but it does mean something is building. She's no longer just neutral. She's starting to trust you in a more instinctive way. And here's where many men go wrong. They either ignore these signals completely and stay passive, or they rush forward, thinking this means they should escalate everything immediately. Both are mistakes because this stage is not about pushing. It's about recognizing. Recognizing that her body is allowing more access, and that access is being given, not taken. That's the difference. Now, another important detail. At this level, her reactions become even more important than the action itself. If you make contact and she subtly leans in, stays relaxed, or continues interacting without any tension, that's a positive response. If she adjusts, pulls away, or creates distance after, that tells you something else. And you need to be able to read that without forcing anything. Because this is the stage where the interaction either deepens naturally or closes back up. If handled correctly, her trust continues to grow. And when it does, it moves into a level that is much harder to misunderstand. A level where the signals become more emotionally significant and much more revealing. Once a woman moves past basic comfort and early trust, something much more significant begins to happen. She starts allowing access to areas that are not just physically closer but emotionally vulnerable. And this is where everything changes. Because at this level, touch is no longer casual. It's meaningful. It reflects something deeper than comfort. It reflects trust. Two of the most important areas here are the neck and the face. And you need to understand why these matter so much. The neck is one of the most vulnerable parts of the human body. Biologically, it's exposed, sensitive, and instinctively protected. Even outside of attraction, people are naturally cautious about who gets close to that area. It's not something you casually allow just anyone to access. So, when a woman is comfortable with you being close to her neck, or doesn't react negatively when you're near that space, it tells you something important. Her guard is lowering. Her body no longer sees you as a potential threat. And that is a powerful signal. Now let's talk about the face. This goes even deeper. The face is not just physical. It's identity. It's personal space in its most direct form. When a woman allows you into that space, whether it's brushing something away, lightly touching her face, or simply being very close without her pulling back, it means she's allowing you into a part of her that she doesn't open easily. Because there's nowhere to hide there. No distance. No buffer. It's direct. And that level of closeness only happens when she feels both safe and emotionally connected. Now here's something important. At this stage, her reactions become very clear if you're paying attention. She doesn't tense up. She doesn't immediately create distance. Instead, she stays present. She may even lean slightly closer. Her breathing may slow. Her body becomes more relaxed, not less. These are not conscious decisions. They're instinctive responses. Her nervous system is no longer in defense mode. It's in acceptance. And that's what makes this level different. Because up until now, her body has been testing, evaluating, deciding whether to open up more or not. But here, she's already decided, at least to a certain extent. She's allowing you closer not because she has to, but because she wants to. Now, this is where many men either break everything or build something real. Because if you rush at this level, if you suddenly become overly aggressive or try to force things forward, her body will immediately shift back into defense. The trust that was building can disappear quickly if she feels that the moment is no longer safe or natural. But if you stay calm, if you remain present, if you don't try to control the moment, she continues opening. Because now she's not just reacting to you. She's choosing to be there. And when a woman reaches this stage, there is only one level left. The one that reveals everything more clearly than anything else. Not because of where it is physically, but because of what it represents emotionally. Now we get to the part that most men either overlook or completely misunderstand. Because this is not just another level. This is the signal. The one that tells you something has already shifted deeply inside her. And it's not where most men think. It's her hair. Now, on the surface, this might not seem like a big deal. Hair is visible. It's always there. And in everyday situations, it doesn't immediately stand out as something special. But psychologically, it carries a very different meaning. A woman's hair is tied to her identity, her femininity, and her emotional expression. It's something she constantly manages herself. She adjusts it when she's nervous, plays with it when she's thinking, and uses it almost unconsciously as a way to regulate how she feels in different situations. It's personal. More personal than most men realize. So, when she allows you to touch her hair, she's not just allowing physical contact. She's allowing you to step into something she normally controls on her own. And that's where the significance comes from. Because this isn't a neutral area. It's not something she casually opens up to everyone. It sits at the end of that progression we talked about. Comfort, trust, vulnerability, and now emotional openness. But here's the part that really matters. It's not just the touch. It's her reaction. If you move your hand through her hair and she immediately pulls back, adjusts it, or creates distance, that tells you one thing. But if she leans into it, if she tilts her head slightly, if her eyes soften, or even close for a brief moment, that's not something she's thinking about. That's her nervous system responding. And that response is real. Because at this point she's not evaluating you anymore. She's feeling you. There's no analysis. No second guessing. Just reaction. And that reaction only happens when she feels safe, comfortable, and emotionally connected at a deeper level. Now here's why this is so powerful. Hair is something she instinctively protects. Not in an obvious way, but in a subtle, constant one. She fixes it, adjusts it, keeps control over it. So WHE. And she allows you into that space without resistance. It means she's giving up that control in that moment. And giving up control is trust. Now let's be clear about something. This is not something you force. It's not something you try to create. It's something that happens naturally when everything before it has been built the right way. If you skip steps, if you try to jump ahead, if you treat this like a move instead of a moment, her body will shut it down immediately because her nervous system will recognize that the foundation isn't there. But when it happens naturally, when she allows it without hesitation, when her body responds positively, that's when you know. Not because she said anything, but because she showed you everything. And once you see that level of response, the final piece becomes even more important. Understanding that the action itself is never the full signal. It's always her reaction to it. Now, this is where most men completely get it wrong, even if they understand everything we've talked about so far. They focus on the action instead of the reaction. They think, I touched her hair, so that must mean something. But that's not how it works. The location matters, yes. The level matters, yes. But none of it means anything without understanding how she responds in that moment. Because the real signal is never the touch. It's what her body does after. Two men can reach the exact same level of physical closeness and still get completely different outcomes. One creates a deeper connection. The other kills the moment instantly. Why? Because of her reaction. Let's break this down clearly. When a woman feels comfortable, safe, and emotionally connected, her body doesn't resist. It receives. You'll notice it in small, almost quiet ways. She stays relaxed. Her body doesn't tense up. She doesn't rush to create distance. In some cases, she even leans in slightly, as if she's meeting your presence halfway. That's a green signal. Not loud, not dramatic, but very real. Now, compare that to the opposite. If she stiffens even slightly, if her body pulls back, if she adjusts herself right after the contact, if she creates space even subtly, that's also a signal. And it's just as important. Because it tells you that something is off. Not necessarily that she dislikes you, but that the level you move to doesn't match where she is emotionally. And this is where most men make their biggest mistake. They ignore the reaction. They push forward anyway. They try to fix the moment. And in doing that, they break the trust that was starting to build. Because her body just told you something and you didn't listen. Now here's the shift you need to make. Stop thinking in terms of what you're doing. Start thinking in terms of what she's feeling. Every interaction becomes easier when you focus on her response instead of your action, because her body is always communicating. Always. Even when she says nothing. Now there's another important layer here. Consistency. One reaction alone is not enough. Anyone can have a moment of comfort, or a moment of hesitation. What matters is the pattern. Does she consistently stay relaxed around you? Does she consistently allow closeness without resistance? Does she consistently respond with openness instead of tension? If the answer is yes, then you're moving in the right direction. If the answer is no, then something needs to slow down. And this is where awareness separates you from most men. Because most men don't read patterns. They react to moments. And reacting to moments leads to mistakes. But when you observe patterns, you understand the bigger picture. You see where she is emotionally. You know when to stay where you are, and you know when things are naturally moving forward. Now here's the most important part. When her reactions are consistently positive, when her body is relaxed, open, and responsive, it means something has already happened internally. She's not just allowing you, she's choosing to. And that leads us to the final truth. Because once a woman starts choosing you at that level, everything becomes clear. Now that you've seen the full picture, let's make one thing clear. This was never about touch, not really. Touch is just the surface. What it actually represents is something much deeper. Trust, comfort, emotional safety, and connection. Every level we talked about, from neutral contact all the way to the most intimate signals, was not about you doing something to her. It was about her allowing you closer based on how she feels around you. That's the difference most men never understand. They think attraction is something they create through actions, but in reality, attraction is something she allows when the conditions feel right, and those conditions are not based on tricks, lines, or techniques. They're based on how you show up. Your presence, your confidence, your ability to stay calm and grounded without forcing anything, your awareness of her REA. Tense. Because when you get those things right, everything else happens naturally. She becomes more comfortable. She opens up. She allows more access. And step by step, without words, she shows you exactly how she feels. Now, here's the part that matters most. You don't rush this. You don't try to jump ahead. You don't treat it like a game where the goal is to reach the final level as fast as possible. Because the moment you do that, you break the process. Her body immediately senses that something is off, and the trust you were building starts to close again. Instead, you let it unfold. You stay present. You pay attention. You respond to what she's showing you instead of trying to control the interaction. And when you do that, something powerful happens. You stop guessing. You stop overthinking. You stop chasing signs that may or may not be real, because you're no longer relying on what she says. You're reading what she shows. And what she shows is always more honest. So, from now on, remember this. It's not about where you touch her. It's about where she allows you. And more importantly, how she responds when you're there. That's where the truth is. That's where the real signal lives. Now, I want you to think about your own experiences. Have you ever been in a situation where a woman allowed a certain level of closeness, but you didn't fully understand what it meant at the time? Or maybe you misread a moment completely and only realized it later. Drop your experience in the comments. I read them and I respond to as many as I can. And if this gave you a completely different way of understanding attraction, make sure you subscribe. Because in the next video, we're going even deeper into female psychology. And I'm going to show you something most men only realize after they've already made the mistake. You don't want to miss that.